Weekly Geopolitical News and Analysis. By Benjamin Fulford, to the Qualified Observers. June 27, 2022. Angela Hitler, Merkel gathers lieutenants in Germany to mourn loss of Fourth Reich. In an echo of history, Angela Hitler gathered her lieutenants at her father's castle in Bavaria to vow to fight the last Ukrainian in the face of inevitable defeat by overwhelming Russian forces. This so-called G7 meeting is part of an emergency gathering of Khazarian mafia leaders who now face both military defeat and war crimes tribunals. A look at the situation in Europe, the US and around the world makes it very clear we are dealing with the end of an era. Even the Jerusalem Post, the flagship newspaper for the former Khazarian mafia stronghold of Israel, admits this now. We are nearing the death of the old geopolitical system and of the world order that has kept repeating itself from the medieval ages. It seems, finally, that this cycle of plague, war and famine will be the last of Western hegemony and the birth of a new world order which will probably bring back the balance of power to Asia and Africa, which were the centers of global wealth and power long before the Industrial Revolution. Let us start with the situation in Ukraine. In a sign of total military defeat, Ukrainian recruiters are now snatching people from their houses, the streets, restaurants and entertainment facilities and sending them untrained and poorly armed to the front lines. A large number of seasoned Nazis were put out of action and those reservists who are now sent into battle aren't fit for the task, military expert Colonel Victor Baranets told RT. Grabbing people off the streets and putting them into ditches to get killed by artillery is a clear sign of the imminent and total collapse of the Ukrainian military. Both Japanese and British military intelligence say the whole so-called war is a marketing operation so the arms industry has an excuse to buy new weapons and keep itself afloat. Japanese military intelligence says what is happening is that NATO is dumping its old and about to expire weapons stocks. The old weapons are all going to Syria and Afghanistan, not Ukraine, they add. NATO is de facto the North Atlantic Arms Trade Organization even if under various other guises, an MI6 source agrees noting, the Russo-Ukrainian conflagration is, in fact, the NATO-Russo conflagration intended to make a market. It is more than just arms sales though. What is really happening is the collapse of the EU and the United States of America Corporation, which are brand names of the Nazi Fourth Reich, the sources say. Behind the scenes, the former Nazi Führer George Bush Sr. ordered the murder of Dr. Michael van de Meer, the former head of MI6, several years ago. In retaliation, the entire Bush clan was executed, MI6 sources say. The Nazis then counter-retaliated with the Frankfurt-based election fraud which installed as president, a Joe Biden who was too incapacitated to know what was happening. The source adds that, to my knowledge, nobody in the world listens to a word the man says. This whole Nazi Biden counter-move has led the US, a car wreck beyond repair and essentially a failed state. What we are likely to witness over the coming weeks or at most months is the complete surrender of Europe, multiple sources agree. However, according to both the NSA and MI6, last Sunday night the world came very close to full-out thermonuclear war when Russia launched 4 nuclear bombers as presidential avatar Vladimir Putin was rushed to an underground shelter. This came after Russia knocked out all European military satellites to blind Western defenses, the sources say. Lieutenant General Gurulyev, a senior commander who now represents United Russia, the main pro-Putin political party, told Russian state TV they were going to hit London first. He also said, "We'll destroy the entire group of enemy's space satellites during the first air operation," he said. Clearly, from a military common sense point of view, the Russians are not going to announce such a move in advance. The following headline makes it clear the satellite takeout has already happened. Wild solar weather is causing satellites to plummet from orbit. It's only going to get worse. In the article Anya Stroma, the European Space Agency's swarm mission manager, told space.com, there is a lot of complex physics that we still don't fully understand going on. Complex physics probably meant Russian anti-satellite weapons. This was followed by a complete news blackout and reports of an imminent nuclear attack. Thermonuclear war stopped when MI6 contacted Russian intelligence to say they agreed with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov's call for creating a common space from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean. In other words, a plan to replace the current Khazarian mafia-controlled international system centered around the UN, the IMF, the World Bank, the BIS etc. is already underway. The plan calls for replacing the UN Security Council with a grouping of representatives from 7 regions. The Americas, North and South, Europe including Russia, China, India, East Asia and Oceania, excluding China, Africa and the Muslim world. This is now coming out in public. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has already publicly called for the unification of North and South America. Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu has called for a Muslim super-state when he said last week, Turkey cannot be contained within its borders.
Tarihimize karşı sorumluluğumuz var. Geleceğe karşı da sorumluluğumuz var. Çünkü Türkiye'den büyük bir Türkiye var. Diyoruz ya, Türkiye Türkiye'den büyüktür. Türkiye'den büyük bir Türkiye olduğunu unutmayalım. İşte bu yüzden biz Türkiye olarak sınırlarımıza hapsolamayız. Tarihimize karşı sorumluluğumuz var.
Now Russia and England have agreed on a unified Europe. A big BRICS Plus gathering last week also made it clear most of the rest of the world also agrees on the end of the US corporation-dominated post-war system.
Your Excellency Xi Jinping, President Ramaphosa, Prime Minister Modi, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to join the previous speakers and thank President Xi Jinping and our Chinese friends for the proactive efforts to promote our strategic partnership within BRICS. Our countries have been working to step up our cooperation on regional and international matters. Every year we see that the BRICS is becoming increasingly important in international affairs. This is an objective reality because the 5 BRICS countries have immense political, economic, scientific, technical, and human potential. And it is true that we have every possibility to work together effectively for ensuring global security, stability, sustained growth and prosperity, and for improving the well-being of our people. We believe that the topic of today's meeting is very much relevant. This is about fostering high-quality BRICS partnership and ushering in a new era for global development. We see that the challenges that the international community faces today are complex, and we need to come up with collective responses within this format. We have said many times that only together we can settle conflicts, fight terrorism, organized crime, including the criminal use of new technology, countering and fighting climate change, and the spread of infectious diseases. Only by working in a win-win spirit, we can benefit from the crisis situation the global economy is facing due to selfish acts by certain countries that have been exploiting financial mechanisms in order to shift their mistakes on other countries of the world. I believe that today, like never before, the BRICS leadership is relevant for shaping a new agenda for a multipolar world order based on the universally recognized principles of international law and the UN Charter. I believe that many Asian, African, Latin American countries will support our efforts, the countries that are committed to an independent foreign policy. I strongly believe that this summit will yield concrete results, that we will have a meaningful exchange of views on the key global and regional matters and on various aspects of our strategic cooperation, including in the BRICS Plus format. Let me emphasize that Russia stands ready to promote its cooperation with all BRICS partners and to further promote the role of the BRICS in international affairs. Thank you for your attention.
At this gathering, the BRICS Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa met with representatives from many countries including Argentina, Bangladesh, Egypt, Indonesia, Kazakhstan, Nigeria, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Senegal, Thailand and Uruguay among many others. Argentina's President Alberto Fernandez requested BRICS membership at the meeting. This is very good news because it means Argentina has asked for Russian and Chinese etc. military help to deal with Khazarian mafia rogue elements who bought up 1,000 miles of Patagonian coastline to use as a hideout during their planned nuclear war, Mossad sources say. At the meeting, the BRICS leaders agreed to use the Contingent Reserve Arrangement (CRA) mechanism as an alternative to the IMF. They also called for an international reserve currency based on the currencies of BRICS member states. Russian President Vladimir Putin said on Wednesday to back up these plans both Europe and the US are being cut off from oil and gas supplies by the rest of the world. Here are a couple of public signs of this boycott. The heads of France's big energy companies on Sunday urged individuals and businesses to limit power consumption immediately to prepare for a looming energy crisis in an open letter published by the weekly newspaper Journal du Dimanche. All G7 members are concerned about the crisis we are confronting, falling growth rates in some countries, rising inflation, raw materials shortages, disrupted supply chains. These aren't small challenges, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said. The world's countries are boycotting Europe and the US economically now in large part because of their genocidal plans. Russian Security Council Secretary Chair Nikolai Patrushev says they have proof from Ukraine that Washington has been trying to kill a large percentage of the world's population. Military biological programs were proven. These projects require particular attention of the civilized world, because the Americans were the only ones who didn't agree to sign the Biological and Toxin Weapons Convention. Of course, as mentioned at the top, the KM leaders are not going to go quietly into the night since they are facing execution for war crimes. So now let us look at what their plans are and how their rule is collapsing. Eltalian P3 Freemason sources say the current plan is to have the rubber-masked avatar pretending to be Pope Francis resign. Then the plan is to create a hunger crisis and have an African pope emerge as a food-providing savior in a desperate attempt to regain KM control of Africa and other developing nations, the sources say. That is why Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres is delaying a solution to the global food crisis through his actions. The KM are also going to keep beating the war drums as long as possible with studio-generated propaganda starring Rothschild employee Vladimir Zelensky. In the latest production, Ukrainian security services staged video footage showing private houses destroyed by the Russian armed forces, leaving local residents homeless. More than 40 actors were employed for the shooting, and all the participants were paid a cash reward of $25. Colonel General Mikhail Mizantsev, chief of Russia's National Defense Management Center, said on Saturday. Then we have the ongoing threats by the WHO etc. to kill us all with bio-weapons. As just one example of this, last week the avatar Biden made an obvious attempt to extort money from the rest of the world by saying, there's going to be another pandemic. We have to plan ahead.
This year, we do need more money, but we don't just need more money for vaccines for children eventually. We need more money to plan for the second pandemic. There's going to be another pandemic. We have to think ahead. And that's not something the last outfit did very well. That's something we've been doing fairly well. That's why we need the money. Thank you all.
Of course, such threats are not being taken lightly. Maybe that explains this video of bodies being taken out of the White House on gurneys. We are also getting multiple reports of the so-called G7 leaders gathering at Hitler's castle, at least 4. French President Emmanuel Macron, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Castro, and of course Joe Biden are just avatars since the originals have been removed. For example, as this news item says, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has had a very minor routine operation related to his sinuses, his official spokesman said on Monday. He was back in Downing Street shortly after 10 a.m. They fail to mention he came back noticeably younger and thinner. Also, notice the Castro scene in Germany is a thinner version of the one seen in Canada recently.
Jackie talk. Can we just film the transcript? Can we take our clothes off? Let's wait for the picture. You just want to show up. What you're saying. Look, the officials, office side. Just want to show up. That's what I all have to show them a tougher than Putin. The bare-chested horseback ride is oh, yes. Take off.
You can rest assured the White Hats in the US, Canada and the UK will get rid of these criminals sooner rather than later. Already Texas and Arizona are refusing to recognize the fake Biden regime. Texas Republicans are now pushing for a referendum to vote on the state seceding from the US in 2023 at a meeting that declared Biden's win illegitimate. Also, CIA sources say Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has agreed to be vice president when the real Donald J. Trump, not the actor seen on KM Propaganda TV, is reinstated as president.
Case regarding Roe versus Wade is now in. All right, so this is the case that involves Roe v. Wade, established 49 years ago. The decision is out. It's been issued by Justice Alito. And Roe v. Wade, according to our reports from the U.S. Supreme Court and our own Shannon Bream, is that Roe v. Wade has been overturned and the question of abortion has been returned to the states.
The KM will try to stage riots, using divisive maneuvers like the overturning of Roe versus Wade and doing other things to keep people fighting each other instead of attacking them. However, it is basically game over. This is what a non-British European royal had to say about the G7 meeting. Most of the top cabal people have surrendered now. This includes groups like the royal family of Sweden. There are just a few holdouts around Angela Merkel who called a meeting last week, the G7, to try to make it seem she still matters. There is also a small ragtag group around the fake Joe Biden. Otherwise, it is a done deal at this point. Finally, once again, we will throw in some visuals sent to us by the secret space program people who promise a lot more than just political change is coming our way. For example, take a look at the cloaked ships, or lenticular clouds, on the 21st of June Solstice Day in North Dakota. Next is a UFO filmed in Mexico.
No sé. Sí se ve, pero no sé qué es.
Then look at this alien medical video sent to us. As usual, we always add that while this stuff is fascinating, it still does not affect our daily lives. The best thing to do in turbulent times is to concentrate on what you see and experience in your personal daily life and make sure that is all okay. However, rest assured the good guys are winning. Humanity will be liberated.
One day I hope you see the truth. This puppet show stays on because